Hey everybody, welcome back to Adventure Engineers. Thank you for joining us tonight. What's up? Awesome. Kelsey, how are you? I'm not bad. If you guys hear loud barking in the background, we got a new dog and he's huge. He's a sweet boy. Cool. Well, I am super excited about this. Last episode, I absolutely loved. We talked a lot about... everyone's saying you're super quiet. Yeah, hold on. We can figure that out real fast. Give me 1 second. No problem. Hold on. I know exactly what it is. I think. There we go. Try now.
Is it? Can you guys hear me now? Waiting for.
I hope so. It looks like you're coming through now.
Okay. It's probably better than before. Oh, good.
Okay, good. Sorry about that, everybody. I was messing with my headphones just before we started. I was trying to do those sweet AirPods, but mine won't connect correctly. So, my mistake. Sorry about that. We will. Let's just start over. Let's just rewind. Hey everybody! Welcome back to Adventure Engineers. So happy to be here. Kelsey, how are you doing?
I love Adventure Engineers, you guys. Thanks for being here. This is really fun.
It's super fun. Last episode was an absolute blast. I loved digging into the Sunless Citadel, one of both of our favorite adventures. Let's see, what's on the agenda tonight, Kelsey?
So we are going to finish talking about the second portion of the Sunless Citadel and then move into the final portion. And we're going to kind of analyze the elements of both of them like we did last week. And then we're also going to talk about a subject that we are trying to pin down, which is what makes Meepo so freaking memorable? Like, what is it about Meepo?
Yeah. This is an open discussion, so we're looking forward to people in the chat sounding off, but we were struck by how universally loved this little guy is.
Yes.
And there's not a lot for him. Yeah, what makes him so... Because I love him. Everyone who I've ever run the Sunless Citadel for has loved him, so we're gonna figure out what makes him so lovable, right?
Exactly. And then I really... And we want to hear what people in the chat think about this in particular, because I don't know, Steven, if neither you nor I have maybe the answer to that. You know, It kind of comes down to opinion in some cases. So I'm really curious what people think about that. So sound off, dudes.
yeah, that's going to be fun. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go to the notes screen so that I can share the map. And I think we had finished the entirety of the upstairs of the Sunless Citadel. Is that accurate? We had finished kind of the final boss fight, the shaman, and we were now at the big circular well that like heads down into the lower level in the grove, right? Yeah. All right. Hang on 1 second. I've lost you again on this screen. Same issue. Apologies. Technology. What can you do? There we go. Gotcha. All right, sweet.
Yay.
Yep. Should be good. Should be good from here on out. I promise. She'll hold together. You hear me, baby? Hold together.
I'm losing concentration on my spell. I don't know what's happening.
No, it's just this is basically the Millennium Falcon, and every time I stream, I'm like flipping switches and buttons and just like keeping my fingers crossed so we make it to hyperspace.
We'll get there. Oh man. But I mean, what were we? So I don't know where I cut off, but I think I was just pontificating about how the second section of the adventure is the main section.
Right, it's the payoff. It's what's got the answers to the questions.
Yes, it does. And it's also very like this goblin portion where we meet Meepo, like that part of the adventure is the most like Swiss Army knife because I feel like it serves a lot of purposes. When we look at the analysis, we see that it has kind of a little bit of everything. Like it's not too heavy into history or foreshadowing or anything in particular. It has elements of all of that. And it's also where the majority of the subplots get presented and resolved. So like an example is the dragon.
Right. I was thinking earlier, as just I was looking through this and thinking, prepping for tonight, I thought if you were to eliminate the descent into the lower level and of course eliminate the hooks into the little twig people and the apples and stuff, you could run the upper level as a completely self-contained dungeon. And I think the payoff is pretty sweet.
That's really interesting. And I completely agree with you now. I've never thought of it that way, but yeah, like the final room of that upper level that's kind of where it really introduces the foreshadowing of what's below. So like you could end up just wrapping it there instead, and that would actually be a really nice self-contained dungeon. Right. For very little changes. And you could even, if you really want to hammer home the alliance with the kobolds, you could have the kobolds be the essentially initial quest givers, or that's where the hook comes from of, kobolds in a city or seeking help or whatever. I think you could, if you really wanted to, you had maybe less time, you could run just the upper level of Sunless and have a wonderful time. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I might look at whether that's possible in like a shorter, like if you don't have as much time to sit down for the whole thing. Yeah. And that maybe that's really interesting, because maybe that is part of why Meepo is so memorable in this particular adventure from end to end, because he's actually a surprise. Like you have no idea that's what you're going to walk into. Yeah. He's like a friendly little faction guy. Like maybe that's part of why he's memorable. That's a good point. I know we're jumping ahead, but maybe you're expecting to walk in and slay everything, and instead you find yourself with a friend. Maybe the real treasure were the friends you made along the way. That's true. Right? That's always the case, right? But yes, we are jumping ahead though. You're totally right. Yeah. So let's like talk about where we kind of left off, because did you say that the top floor? I think we had just wrapped up the final room of the top floor, because we talked about kind of the civilian goblins and then that final kind of boss fight and the interesting things you could do with that shaman, and I think we're now kind of descending into the second half. And yeah, Jonathan, you're right. It's maybe like, 70% of Sunless Citadel is the upper level, but still the bottom level still has a lot going for it. Yeah, and it's where stuff gets creepy and magical, because like everything's pretty mundane on the top level too. That's another theme, and I think something that Bruce Cordell's really good at is he draws contrast. So he'll have a really thematic feel to a certain area, and then when you move into another area, it's almost the opposite. And it's especially true between like if you were to go left at the first the historical part. Yeah. It's so different in vibe from the main part of the adventure, and it's using contrast to make it more impactful. And I feel like that's something as a writer that it's like an interesting takeaway. Like I want to do that more. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. It does sort of, it sculpts the experience and keeps it fresh. And I think Jake said, his group ran Sunless in like 12 sessions, but each one of those sections can take a while. And so you could almost have a whole session around one of those sections of game and be a very different theme from, next week's or the week before's as a result of exactly what you're talking about. I had never really thought about the way he kind of compartmentalizes theme even within the dungeon. Yeah, he does. So, and that actually is an interesting question too. Do you remember, Steven, like roughly how many sessions it took you to play this from end to end? Yeah, I know exactly, because we have one of them streamed. It was 4 sessions of about 3.5 to 4 hours each. So probably 16 hours. And like, maybe this is a minor tangent too, but because we're on this subject, did you feel like your players were getting like dungeon exhaustion by the end of it, or were there... Good question. I don't think so. I will say, as we're jumping into the second half, I don't know that they enjoyed the second half as much. Oh. I think they were sort of ready to be like, oh, okay, are we done with this now? I don't know that that's entirely fair, because I do think it was fun, and I think the last fight was really cool.
but parts of it are a little, I don't know. I think it didn't have quite the same charm as the upper level.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Like we should talk about it as we go through the rooms, like the things that they felt most compelled by versus not, because that's again, that's good information.
Agreed.
What does this say? Oh, Jake's saying his players got real tired of all the doors.
Yeah.
Oh, and that is really interesting because we calculated the number of barriers that like locked doors or like things that you have to break through.
That's right.
And there are a lot.
I will say my data analysis is only for the upper level. So maybe going into next episode, I'll finish that data analysis for the lower level. And we could compare and contrast them. Because I get the gut feeling that every time I've run it, the second story doesn't quite have as much impact as the upper story. And it could be any number of things.
That is so interesting. But I wonder, and then maybe... are we allowed to show some of the like info you pulled about the upper level?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Before we leave the upper level, we can look at that actual awesome data.
All right. It's not much. It's basic numerator denominator stuff here. And I will say Kelsey did the hard work. She actually went through each room and pulled out all this information. You can see we've got gobs of data about the sort of upper levels and got a sweet pivot table here. So we threw together some charts just really looking at the upper level of the Sunless Citadel. And so, it's pretty clear to see here that I would not have known this. Anecdotally, if you said, hey, what is the most encountered thing in the upper level, I would have never said it was traps, and followed closely by puzzles, right? I'm
shocked by that. I know, that is so not... like what I would instinctually say you should design toward, but like what do I know? Like it's actually like really, because this second portion, like the middle portion of the dungeon, is so successful. Like there's something to this,
Yeah. By the way, everyone calling us nerds, you're the ones watching us on a Saturday night, nerds doing data analysis on a D&D adventure. So y'all just you check yourselves out there.
This is like ultimate level. Oh my god.
Also, I will totally own it.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I love this. Honestly, like I would spend all day doing this kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, this is very basic analysis, and there's lots of stuff we can say about this, right? Like, barrier is pretty broad. I think you had locked doors, like the caltrops counted, anything that hinders progress, we kind of considered a barrier. Total social, sometimes I double counted with total combat in cases where I thought it was extremely feasible that you could, talk your way out of a situation, particularly with some of the kobolds later on. So some of those I double counted. And also total treasure, we only really counted as major treasure. There's a lot of little stuff scattered around, of course, like, hey, you get, 4 silver pieces and a dagger. Like, I didn't even count that stuff, right? So this is like
No, I was just agreeing with you like that because again, like even from a writing standpoint, the little treasure is really just dungeon dressing. It's hardly, it's like negligible. You don't even need it strictly.
Right. I usually just skip it, to be honest, or, my players also rarely loot bodies and stuff. So we tend to just give a bigger treasure sort of at the end.
Yeah.
So and moving down. Go ahead. Sorry, please.
Oh, again, I'm always like going on a tangent, but I think I know that Sunless Citadel was an introductory adventure for 3rd edition when D&D was kind of rebranding itself. And I wonder if they were sort of, Wizards was trying to see what players wanted out of this because it's so varied and it has some really old school D&D tropes, but some new design on it too. And I feel like this is a big experiment, for what players we're going to latch on to.
Yeah, definitely could be. Yeah, and I'd be curious to see if that changed much from 3rd to 5th. I'm not familiar with the 3rd edition version, so.
I don't have it actually. I should go through and look at it and compare. But I from what I've heard people say, this is almost an exact port. Just updated with 5th edition rules, and so. Right. It is interesting. I wonder, how does this adventure compare to the presentation style of what you'd consider more recent or modern adventures?
Yeah, good question, right? Because also third was delivering right off the heels of second, which was much closer to first, right? Like first and second, I think share much more similarities, similar to third and fifth. Like I think third and fifth are kind of very close cousins. And so I personally feel like by the time third and fifth came around, mundane treasure mattered a lot less. This is completely anecdotal, but for me playing like, first edition, I didn't play a lot of first, but I played a lot of second edition. We tracked every damn little thing. Like if you pick up a stick, you're like, oh, cool. All right, let me write that down because I'm going to use that later. And in fifth edition, I think you just have so many abilities innately, right? Like your characters are just individually so much more flexible and powerful that you're like, a stick, whatever, man, I throw that away. Like, yeah. So I feel like maybe there's a change there too. I don't know.
There is. It's a weird shift. Like there's... I mean, a lot of second and first edition, I think, leaned heavily on the more mundane at lower levels and player skill versus character skill. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's like I think third edition was so new that they were trying to kind of tiptoe into, presenting dungeons, but it wasn't. I don't know if they were positive what people were going to actually latch onto. Yeah. Is hoarding treasure important to people? Probably not as much, but they're not sure. So anyway, that was a tangent.
No, that was great. That was super interesting. Hey, what's up, Quest and Chaos? Thank you guys for the raid. Appreciate that. We're just doing something super nerdy. I promise. Well, actually, I was gonna say I promise this is actually cool. I'm not sure that it is. We're looking at the Sunless Citadel and breaking it down really through the data. So we're kind of assessing what makes it so great because it's a wonderful adventure if you've ever run it. So as I continue forward in our very basic data analysis, you can see here that I took the same analysis from above and broke it down by those sections of the upper level. So the left door path is the sort of history, very interesting lore-filled section. The right door path is really I delineated the right door path as kind of where you go and fight the rats, or where you find the dried out fountain and stuff and whatnot. The dungeon descent is simply the entranceway. The goblin side is where most of the combat happens, and then the kobold side is sort of Meepo and through there. So, a couple of things jump out very quickly, which are, maybe this didn't need a data analysis because you kind of feel it in your gut. The goblin side is far more combat heavy. The kobold side is far more social heavy, which is kind of, I don't know. I think that anecdotally, but it's kind of interesting to look at.
Yeah, there's always the opportunity for that to flip-flop potentially, although I guess I've never heard of players allying themselves against the kobolds with the goblins, but it's technically possible.
I've never heard of it either. I'd love to see it. I'd love to watch a totally different wacko run through of the Sunless Citadel, because I've run it 3 times and it's gone similarly every time.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, everybody, while you're here, as you may or may not know, we recently hit our major goal of 1,000 followers on our channel, which we were super blown away about. And so to that end, we are doing tons and tons and tons of giveaways over the next couple of weeks. And I will kick one off right now. This is a raffle for anyone in the channel. This is a generous donation from Kelsey herself right here. And this is a copy of the Monstrous Lexicon, which is essentially a tome of really cool monsters that you did with the Pickled Dragon, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is super cool. I will say, big spoiler alert, there's a whole section that are aliens, from the movie Aliens. They're not called that, but I saw what you were throwing down, Miss Dionne. I saw.
Oh, they're so actually. Oh my God, they're definitely aliens, and It was so fun to write. Thank you, and I hope whoever wins it writes so many monster adventures after this.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I am planning a one-shot where people go to a derelict ship, like a sailboat. But I'm going to make it totally aliens. And they'll probably pick up on it eventually, but I'm going to have the company guy, a Burke type dude. I'm going to make aliens, and it's going to be using those creatures. So here we go. We are starting the raffle right now. You can enter by typing !join. If you're here for the first time, please consider giving us a follow. But if not, we don't mind. We're just glad you're here. All right, getting right back into this analysis.
Yeah,
No-
so we'll talk about. I've already dragged us along like slowly enough, but if we are gonna move into the last section now and probably talk about it in its shortness, it's not very long. Although the map itself is big, the number of rooms and things that you can do here is actually almost as small as the first sort of left path.
You're right. It's pretty sparse, really.
Mm-hmm. And it's, there's like, and this is probably for story reasons, like there's no real subplot in here except maybe figuring out the twig blights.
Right.
There's no foreshadowing required anymore because they're moving into the last section.
Right.
So that really just leaves room for main story, and that's what this section focuses on. When you look at the data, most of the encounters have to do with moving forward and resolving the main storyline.
Right. Yeah, and it's the payoff for the final boss fight, right? I mean, that's really what it is. And I was thinking about this the other day, and also what we were talking about earlier of kind of why it's fallen a little bit flat. And I wonder if there just wasn't quite enough setup for the boss. Like he almost comes out of nowhere. Like you're like, oh, it's a druid down here doing the things. Like I wonder if there is one rumor mentioned in town, but I almost wonder if it had been mentioned a little more.
Yeah, and like you don't really discover many details about him until you get down here, and so it seems like it all comes on very suddenly.
Right.
And the storyline is also a bit complex. Like you're there to save adventurers, but you still haven't seen them yet by the time you get down here. Except there is a dead one.
You found 2 dead ones above, I think, and then there's 2 still unaccounted for. So, all right, let's do a quick run through of what's down here, and then I think we can kind of circle back and do that analysis and look at the whole adventure kind of holistically. So right off the bat, you come down here into 42, which is the kind of soft dirt all over the place. It's where that big well essentially opens up down below. I forget what the name of that area is, but I've got it right here, so we can scroll down. It is called the Central Garden, right? And it is cool that right off the bat you do get like, okay, something's real weird here. There's, first of all, plant matter growing, right? Underground. So there is something kind of like, okay, that's pretty strange. And there are skeletons tending to the garden, which that is pretty cool. I like that.
I do like that. But here's a question. How did your players react to this change of environment? Do you remember, like, were they really suspicious or anything?
I think they were just kind of confused, just kind of like, oh, okay, hold on, what? That's like a garden? And, I hammered the, like, there are like, phosphorescent or whatever, what do they call it? Bioluminescent lichen, but like this is growing without sunlight. So there is something strange here, right?
Yes. Cool. Well, I'm sure that players know that they're moving towards the conclusion and that this has something to do with it. Like that's kind of metagaming, but people can sense that.
Yeah. And you're right. Maybe there are more hints dropped than I'm kind of willing to give it credit for, but it does feel a little bit like, okay, well, we dealt with the goblins and now there's plants growing without sunlight. That's kind of strange.
It is. But
I like it.
Yeah, it's very thematic. And then where do they move? They can move up into 43.
Yes.
Which it has a tunnel to nowhere, which is always like a really risky design thing. And I've totally done something like that, and like we had to write it out of the adventure because it was too risky.
That was super interesting. I've been lucky enough that no one's ever wanted to go down this tunnel, but when I ran the very first version of the Mask of the Worms, there was a tunnel to nowhere. People are like, okay, cool, I guess we take the tunnel. I'm like, wait, no. I
know, and I was like, I got it. Maybe this was like subconsciously inspired by this adventure, because I don't remember thinking, oh, I'm gonna use a Sunless Citadel idea, but
no. Hey, there's tunnels everywhere all over D&D, right? That's half the fun, the unknown.
And like, why do we even have them? I think like as a writer, it's because you want to convey that there's a reason why there's an underground and it's been burrowed. Like you have to imply that something made this space.
Right.
But I think there's a way to do that without giving the characters a potential like derailing.
Yeah. Right. The cool factor is, man, we can go explore the Underdark. That's tight. The negative is this where we're supposed to go? Right? Because the players can only work with the information given to them, and if you're not careful, they can think that's sort of the next step in the path. And then you have to really break immersion and either be like, okay, well, I guess we're done with the Sunless Citadel, or think of ways on your feet to get them back or whatever. I think I've always described it in a way that people are like, I don't care about that. I can't remember exactly how, but
that's good DMing because you like know your players and you know kind of how to steer them subconsciously towards what they're there to do, because players don't know that. And
right.
I see someone saying too, like the Mad Mage is full of these sort of side tunnels. That is very true. And Wizards actually acknowledges that in the book by saying you might need to design some side dungeons because there's a lot of tunnels to nowhere. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Use at your own risk.
Well, if there's one thing you need more of in that book are more dungeons, right?
Exactly. Oh my. There's a lot there.
So
yeah, they get past the tunnel they hopefully don't take the tunnel to nowhere. We'll assume they don't.
Right. But I've always had the hunter there. I think that's a cool encounter. It's supposed to be a D100. There's a percentage chance that he's there versus off hunting. But I always have him there. And I think some of the time they've fought him and some of the time they've kind of talked him out of being like, hey, we don't have any quarrel with you. And he's kind of like, all right, cool. I guess I'll just go my own way. But I like that seeing him very much implies that there is more of an ecosystem down here because he's a hunter-gatherer. He's bringing back supplies, bringing back food. I think that's an important thing to convey there again, adding to the fact that this is a living, breathing place.
Yeah, I do like that. I like the idea that, of course, there's going to be things going on in this ancient place that have nothing to do with any particular subplot. He's just there. He's not really allied, at least from my understanding, and I could be wrong about this. He didn't really have an alliance with any particular faction. He was just kind of living there.
Yeah, let's see.
Maybe he's like with the goblins. I don't know.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, I can't remember now. Scott was that National Chamber.
Yeah, I could be wrong about that, but I liked him because he's so, he's got like that's the one with the antlers, right? He's got like the helm with the antlers. He's just like really cool.
He's got like the hunting rats.
Yeah, he has trained like his war dogs, or they're actually rats.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that part. So I'll say this before we even get into it. My players, in the 3 times I've run it, have never gone to 44, 45, or 46.
Oh, okay, wait.
They've never headed south.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And that's like a totally optional portion. Which, like, yeah, these are good to have. Like this is one thing that I'm guilty of when I write my first drafts of adventures is I sometimes like do a cattle slide where I don't give options to go into just areas of the dungeon that exist just because. And so, I mean, they're always good to have like offshoots to just sort of reinforce the flavor and have like a little thing that the players can pick up on, or what is actually in those rooms? I forget. 45 is...
Yeah, so first you kind of come down and there's that massive rift. It's like a tear through that you can actually use to get into the lab area. So it's just a second way of getting into the lab. And then you do find a shrine in there. That's kind of another, I don't even remember what it is, to be honest, but I think it's another kind of dragon shrine. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks like it's, important to the dragon cult. So it ties into the motif from up above. And
and this was the section that was the most heavy in history once again.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
One of the most, yeah. And so it's like, it's definitely not necessary for the main plot, but it maybe just reinforces the flavor.
Right. And there is a one little combat there, a little fire snake. Should be a relatively easy fight at that point because the characters are probably level 3 at this point, I think. Or maybe they're level 2. I forget when you're kind of supposed to level up in this, but I don't know. There's like a little sidebar and then a quick little fight, but I think 47 is the beginning of the end, right? 47 is clearly like, okay, this place is lived in by someone powerful because it's like, labs and weird experiments and stuff going on in those rooms.
Yeah, and it starts to explain absolutely. Like I feel like actually when you hit these rooms, that's when you know what the ending is going to be.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
there is some kind of magical mad science going on, and
Yes.
that's what's causing all of this.
Yeah, which is cool. Like at this point, you're like, okay, here we go. Magic crazy dude. We're going to have to go slay some crazy magic user.
Exactly. And I really like that. I like that the characters sort of get to solve the question for themselves just by what they encounter through exploration.
Right.
It's not like the last room where he suddenly like reveals his evil plot that they could never have guessed. It's like they should come into the last room almost knowing what's going to happen.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that. But yeah, because he's not necessarily even, making some evil plot to ensnare anyone. He's kind of just going about his research, and, it's messed up, of course, because he's, using these bodies or these charmed adventurers or whatever it is that, but... Yeah, he's probably just as surprised that the adventurers are there as they are that he's there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely still surprised. Like, there's still questions that get answered in that last fight. But I think, and again, this is like a design thing that I'm like, oh, I need to remember to do this. As much as you can let the players discover the reasons on their own, I mean, the better. Because it's more satisfying for the players to sort of like, at least I would think to feel like they're the ones figuring out the story instead of having it told to them at the end, like, this is why I did this, so.
Oh, that's a great thought, because the risk you run is there's a couple of things, right? It's a balancing act. I never really thought about this, but on the one hand, and by the way, congrats, Quest and Chaos. That's fantastic, man. Shoot me a message somewhere, Twitter or here or wherever, and I will get you a copy of that book. Congratulations.
Yay, congrats.
So it's a balancing act, right? Because on the one hand, if the players are completely confused by the end, it's going to take a lot of exposition that they maybe don't care about, right? You're sort of like, all right, whatever, let's get to kill this dude. On the other hand, if you let them figure it all out, maybe there's a little less surprise. So there's probably a sweet spot of like, you want them to understand 80% and the missing piece comes into play, right? Where it's like, oh, we were right there. We had all of it figured out, and then that last little piece makes it all, anytime you can leave players like, when you reveal something, you've probably struck that perfect balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you allow certain suspicions to be rewarded, but having a twist is always very like masterful. Like it's the best, and is there a twist in this? Maybe, because you're like, yes, there's definitely like a mad scientist druid thing happening. You get that sense going through the rooms, but you still don't know what happened to the two adventurers.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know that I'd call it a twist, only because you don't have as much information up front. But I do think it's a pretty satisfying conclusion. Like, I think once you figure it all out, and if it's okay with you, let's just skip this middle stuff. I mean, there's some interesting stuff in here. Let's jump to the final encounter, right?
Yeah, because now they know it's coming. It's basically like anything in between is just like a barrier.
Yeah, and I do think rooms 48 through 49 were like by far the only part of the kind of slog when I've run it, and I think I even shortened it. I think I cut one of the 48, 49 pairs just to like, let's get to the end here.
Interesting, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna jump right to the kind of grove at the end. And that's the grove fight is pretty cool for a number of reasons, right? Like, number one, we've got the crazy mad druid doing crazy stuff. He's got I can't remember if they're actually corpses or if they're charmed. In my game, I made it a little darker. I made them corpses that had like tree roots, like coming into their body. So they had like become one. They had, engaged in communion with the tree. So I made them, I don't remember if they're actually dead or not in the original. Are they?
I don't remember, because they don't actually, like, do they die in the tree?
I can't remember. I'm looking right now.
Yeah, I can't remember either. So we shall soon find out. But maybe while you're doing that, as we move into the final fight, I can draw people's attention to the very clever terrain used to build this last fight. I always love looking at this, because there's a huge thing that goes through your mind when you're writing is, how am I going to make sure the players don't, first of all, see the enemy from 1,000 feet and just like pepper him with arrows / like I don't know. And so like Bruce, when he made this map, Bruce Cordell, he did a lot of breaking up of line of sight and a lot of the need to move into a space and like have it revealed to you. Like there's a lot of broken walls and terrain in the way, so it's not just like a run and smash type fight.
Right.
And it gives the players a chance to maybe like be sneaky up to the last second. And so like I can definitely see there was like thought put into how to lay out the terrain of the final fight. I mean, even from the wall 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 30, even from the edge of the wall, it is just far enough to be outside of one move of one character. And I think that was all mindfully chosen. I would like to think so. It's like 35-ish feet from the wall edge. And so
I think you're right. It definitely struck me the same way that it's very difficult to get line of sight from the entrance to the tree until you're extremely close. Right? Like, I don't know if people can see my cursor, but it's sort of right here, maybe. You kind of have to be right here before you can see the tree. So yeah, that's super cool. And yes, both Jake and Sean pointed out, and that's right, I forgot about it, that they will die 24 hours after the tree is killed. So there is some connection there. I think I made mine more like more creepily overt, right? Like there were tendrils and vines like digging into their body, replacing their central nervous system or something.
Ooh, nice.
But I do love that. That's a cool. Well, first, we'll finish talking about the terrain, because also I think the more terrain like this, the better in any fight. And there's a lot of great places and opportunities for players of all types to kind of excel here. Like maybe you climb up on some of the ruins and do something like attack from above. Maybe you are hopping from opening to opening, firing off your arrows and then, darting from side to side while someone's trying to tie them up. I think just having interesting terrain and fights is so much better than essentially being a dressed up grid. Yeah, and
it's something that is always a battle, I think, when you're writing, especially a climactic combat. Like you want to, you try to take every single element into account, including how far away is the enemy from a move, like a single move from where the players enter. Like even trying to control for that part of the setup, at least when I'm writing stuff, definitely comes into play. And so I thought Bruce did a great job with this. Like it's really cool terrain. There's a bunch of like mooks that spellcasters can feel great about blowing up like on their way in, which is very satisfying for them, because this then becomes more of a solo fight that favors sort of the fighter and rogue types. So everybody gets something cool to do, and then down to the fight.
Yeah, it's a great final fight. There's basically 3 tiers, right? You've got the mooks, the ads, right? All the little blights that are coming after them that frankly can hurt if they start to mass up. But anyone that's got AoE stuff, anyone that's got the ability to blast in some way, love killing those guys. Then you've got kind of the 2 lieutenants, right? In the Who Krails, who are, no slouches, but they're kind of the next level up. And then of course you've got Belloc himself, who is, he's pretty beefy with stone skin and everything. I mean, it's a lethal fight. I've killed 2 characters in this fight before.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty nasty. The combinations get pretty good.
Yeah. It seems like a really tough fight, and but that's kind of how it should be. Yeah. You want it to be deadly, and there's also some cool twists that can happen during the combat. Like Balok's like frog can fall out of the tree on somebody, which is like a nice like change up to have happen during the combat. And,
yep. And I will say, going back to the kind of payoff, the one rumor you should definitely plant in the town is that there was that adventurer who had the frog, because that's the only one that you'll be like, yeah, they mentioned that. I think that's kind of the only rumor about him specifically, but it is in the book like way early on.
Very true. That's like the most far distant foreshadowing possible.
Yeah, exactly. Just a great fight. Any other thoughts about the last fight? What do you got? What do you think?
It's interesting because I don't think any DM actually wants the last fight to become like a diplomacy argument. So I feel like it's written strongly into the game that Balok will try to stall by chatting, but he will eventually resort to combat. And I was going to ask you, Steven, like if your players ever tried to sort of like, if they ever invested a pretty fair amount of time like chatting with him or being like, why have you done this or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think because I've made it more clear that what's going on is really dark. Like, even if you were to see the Who Krails and maybe not get the connection to the tree yet, what I've done by making them more overtly connected to the tree sort of leaves no room for interpretation there. And my players tend to play leap at the chance to do good type of players. So
Yeah.
I don't know that there's ever been much conversation there.
I don't think most people would probably try to waste their time chatting him out of it because they know this is a boss fight.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
who knows? I'm sure it's happened though. I'm sure it has. Someone
out there or has at least chatted him up to distract him or something cool, but I think it's inevitable that you're having combat at this point.
Yeah. Is there ever could there be a great meme in this? Like the player rolls a natural 20 on their persuasion
right.
for the boss fight and the DM's just like
whatever. Yeah, I guess you convinced him. Sure, we're done. Go home.
No, I know that'd be so funny. I guess I still wouldn't. I would still be like, I don't know. What would you do in that game? What would you do? Here's a theoretical. Let's say someone tried to diplomacy Balak out of attacking them and they rolled a 20. What would you do as a DM?
All right, here's what I would do. First of all, nat 20s only ever actually occur in combat. So a skill check technically can't ever critically succeed. That being said, I do want to benefit rolling 20s because it's fun. I mean, when you see a 20 come up on the die, so I tend to treat it like a critical success in a less than, dire situation. I think in this case, I would have him heavily consider himself and consider his convictions. And you would probably succeed at him being like, trying to remember his former self. But I think ultimately that would only trigger the inner rage, and he would then probably wind up attacking him. But it might certainly buy them some time and maybe some introspection from the villain. And if they could use that time and capitalize on it, then great. I don't think I would allow this fight to not happen. It'd be the same with Strahd. That final fight is gonna happen. You can you can try all the social tricks you want. And look, if someone has a super compelling argument or a sacrifice or something, then that's a different situation. But if it's kind of a off the cuff, hey man, maybe you shouldn't do evil persuasion 20, this is still happening, right?
Exactly. I like that. I think that's a really very good response to that type of situation.
Yeah.
It's good to know. Yes. So it's a fight. It's a tough fight, but Jake says if they destroy the tree, they actually set things into motion for a later third edition module. Is that one later on in the chain of this set of adventures?
Yeah, I'm interested to know that too. And I will say, speaking of Strahd and speaking of the Gulthias tree, there is a major tie-in in Strahd where there is a Gulthias tree growing on Yester Hill. And so when I got to that point, knowing my character's love of this game, I tied them together. And I did something kind of a little, almost an epilogue moment in one of the sessions where I implied that the Gulthias tree is this evil, ancient entity, and its roots actually run between planes. And so the Gulthias tree growing here, and maybe elsewhere, there's sprouts of the Gulthias tree on Toril. It's connected to the Gulthias tree on Yester Hill, and it had flourished there because so much evil was being done that the thing thrives in environments of pure evil. So that way I can kind of call back upon the Gulthias tree in other situations, and even see little sprouts of it and stuff in places of evil.
Oh, that is so cool. You guys are the masters at making elements of one kind of campaign become a part of another. Like the Shards of Amber is so cool.
We try to. It's more fun when people for the players. The characters don't know the difference, but the players get to be like, oh, it was that NPC from before.
Dude, and that's important.
Yeah.
The players experiencing the game, you write things to appeal to them as players, and so DMing has to do that too.
Yeah.
So cool. Oh
all right.
Man, the last fight they get them. Maybe they save the Hukrills, and maybe you kind of can't save them the way it's written, but I'm sure that. I don't know. Have you ever let players rescue them from their fate?
I think I've had a final tragic, give this ring to my mother type thing, but I've never had them get them out of there. It's too late for that. But, listening to being reminded how it's actually written in the book, it would be kind of cool to have them have the tearful reunion with their family only to then die because of their disconnection from the tree. That could be a nice heart-rending moment.
Yeah, I like that. That's actually really clever because then it still gives the impact of the loss. But
yeah,
you got to make the bad guys bad. It's sometimes even if I sometimes feel bad being like, this person is so evil and they do such terrible things. But if you don't do that, then the players don't care about the results. So
Right. And also, listen, the world is a place of lots of horrible shades of gray and different sides. Sometimes it's just nice in D&D to be like, hey, that is a bad guy. And that person is going to do the worst shit imaginable because that's who they are. And you should beat them because you're the good guys. And let's just keep it easy, Yep.
Sometimes you just need a heroic situation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've only got 9 minutes left. There are two things I still want to talk about, one of which being Meepo, which we'll come back to. The other is my proposal for you and the question for the chat to hear this. I would love to, next episode, do some high-level planning for Storm King's Thunder, because I'm going to be running that campaign next for our Sunday games, and we've only got maybe 5 to 7, I'm not 100% sure, episodes left of Waterdeep Dragon Heist before we're going to want to kick off Storm King's Thunder. So what I really want to do is exactly what we're talking about here, making sure the final epic moments have been planted and seeded all along. So for example, for those of you who have played through Storm King's Thunder, I am going to have the game open up on the gambling barge, the Grand Dame in Yartar. They're going to be gambling on this barge that later on is very important. I hope my players aren't watching right now. I've already told them you're not allowed to watch the next episode because I just really want to lay out a very high level plan, even if it's bullet points, of make sure to mention this thing at this opportunity so that later it makes more sense and has a good payoff. So would you be interested in helping me do that?
I so want to. This is great for me. I learned so much about DMing from you, and one thing that I feel like we all could use help with is figuring out how to seed long-term campaign elements.
Yeah. You want those payoffs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Cool. Awesome. That'll be a fun conversation. So next episode, you heard it here first. Okay, we've got 8 minutes left. I think it makes the most sense to go ahead and finish this conversation with sweet baby little Meepo. Let's just get his picture back real fast.
Helpless little Meepo. I know. And what is it? When the players come upon this poor little guy, he's moping in a bedroll. He's whimpering inside of a bedroll.
All right, so let's read exactly what they see, right? All right. So you kind of see everything. A bedroll lies near the wooden bench, and the sound of whimpering comes from inside it. All right, and then Meepo doesn't have a whole lot, but there's a couple lines of dialogue. One is, "The clan's dragon. We lost it. The wretched goblin stole Calcrix, our dragon." And it says Meepo don't know, talks about the king, the queen, Eustrail, offers to give them safe passage. The secret keyword or the secret password is ticklecorn, which always makes people goof. That's kind of it, but you get so much information about this little guy here, right? Just so much information.
Yeah, he's so straightforward and he kind of wears his heart on his sleeve. He perks up at the thought of helping the players, it says, which is probably not what they were expecting at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I love is it's my players, as I mentioned before, tend to be good. So the honest call for help rarely falls on deaf ears for them, right? And so this pitiful little creature, they're gonna take pity on him.
Yes, I've never seen a party just walk up to him and be like, "Let's kill this guy."
Right.
My players didn't do that, and I ran this a long time ago, but I remember the standout moments, including how much they loved Meepo, right away.
Meepo is universally loved. I mean, you say the name Meepo around D&D players, and there's someone who's like, "Aw, I love him." And I think, and I'm not even sure it's super, maybe it is, but I don't remember if it's actually written into the adventure, but every time I've run it, Meepo insists on accompanying them and slowly displays his courage, right? So he's not just a guide or an advisor, and he's not cowering with them. I always have him running to the front and trying to help and being sweet.
Oh, and that's like such a, I mean, like, that's like classic character quality. Like bravery is a really huge way to build sympathy or empathy for a character.
Right.
Yeah. He's a little hero.
He's just such a little sweetie. And yeah, you see him going from pathetic to frankly kind of badass. Olga Drebus painted this kobold, and I mean, man, captured it. Look at that little guy. He's so cute.
He looks like determined and innocent. And it's interesting because maybe this is an example of the fact that you don't need a lot to make a memorable character. Like you don't need a big description and like a big history and like complex motivations. He has a motivation, a simple one.
Right.
And he acts a certain way right off the bat from the characters. And like that combined is really all you need, you know?
Yeah.
And I even think like, I tend to feel like I'm pretty sparse with the way I describe NPCs, and I think he could even fit into a reduced version of the way that I do it too.
I think he could, because you don't necessarily even need his lines of dialogue, right?
No.
And
he's got one quote.
But still, though, there's so many vast numbers of NPCs, and none of them are loved quite the same as him. So is it really just his hero journey? Because I can't think of many other NPCs that necessarily get that same opportunity. Is it that he starts so low and ends so high? If he dies, he frequently dies at the dragon, but not always. He's still kicking in our world. Yeah,
I mean, like, I think there's something to be said about an NPC that surprises the players at being helpful, because like, you know, it's like, have you noticed this like inverse like thing that happens where the more trustworthy you try to make an NPC, the more the players do not trust it?
Listen,
or him or her. Like
one of my biggest hangups was Irina Koliana in Curse of Strahd. I tried to make her like headstrong a little bit and brave and like I don't know, just a little bit, not stubborn necessarily, but being like, yeah, I know I can take care of myself. I appreciate that you're here, but I don't need you to treat me like a child. And my characters hated her. They didn't like her. They didn't trust her as a result of her seeming strong.
Yeah, so I almost wonder if the reason that Meepo, not only because of his heroics that come out, which I think most people would agree is in character for him, but like, he is not what he's supposed to be. And I think players like that. I think
that's true.
Because they're expecting him to be an evil kobold trying to kill them. And like, I think making somebody what they're not is possibly a way to make them memorable.
That's a really good point. Yeah, he plays on their expectations. Here they see a kobold that previously they would kill, and now they see him and he needs their help. Yeah,
and then gold-hearted Irina is for some reason untrustworthy.
Also, children are forever. My character's like, oh yeah, what's going on with this kid?
What's
going on with this creepy kid? The girl in Mask of the Worms, I was just waiting for people to totally mistrust her. They didn't. They leaned into it.
You assumed she was possessed. I'm trying to think of the times I've written kids into adventures, and both times they were like in a bad situation. Is there another time? That's it. Yeah. And one of the most like trustworthy characters that I ever wrote, I had the hardest time in playtesting getting the players to trust her. And I was like, what is up with this? I was like, she's completely nice and like just a regular nice person who's trying to give them an adventure hook. And they're like, she's trying to kill us. She's trying to get us killed and like all this. And so I had to actually make her a little bit more edgy, which actually resulted in the players taking her more at face value.
Really?
Like I had her act more secretively and then they believed her, which was mind-boggling.
That's hilarious. There's got to be something there. I guess maybe they think the DM presenting someone who seems too nice, it's too good to be true, right?
Maybe.
They're gonna betray him. Maybe we've betrayed players too much. It's learned behavior. You did this to me.
This is Pavlovian. Like, they just can't trust anyone who seems trustworthy. So.
Exactly.
That's so funny. Oh man, someone said they had players fall in love with a goblin. B1 Sonic. Oh, there was a goblin Mikas who became a paladin. See, love seeing people become something you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I love that. So right now in our Max cinematic universe, Meepo is a level 2 rogue. He just got to level 2. And let me just say that kobolds, the player race, is extremely capable as a rogue. They're wildly powerful.
Oh my god, I love it. I've seen a high level kobold warlock as well, and that was hysterical because he was a warlock of like the great old one.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that was great too.
All right, well, we're at 10:30. Any closing thoughts on the Sunless Citadel?
Well, this will always be one of my most beloved memories of running D&D, and I'm probably going to run it for another group soon.
Good, cool.
And I really like the analysis we did. I think we can do this down the road. We can look at similar data for other adventures and see how it stacks up against this one.
Yeah, I think that'd be really fun to do. We could break apart similarly sized ones and compare them. Maybe we could even do Forge of Fury next, because it is technically the second one in the adventure path, and I don't know people love it as much. So
I was looking through it, and I think that it has the problem of second edition called the complexity is so bad that I can't even figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Jake. All right. Well, hey, thank you everyone for joining us, Kelsey. That was super fun.
Yay. Thanks, you guys. This was fun. This is always great to chat about this kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Getting nerdy with it. Quest and Chaos, congrats again on the win. Reach out to me and I will have that mailed out to you. And until then, I am raiding a random D&D channel I found. So stick around, show them some love, and see if you can make their night. Thanks, everyone, for being here again. We'll be back tomorrow night with Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Hope to see you then.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, launching the raid. Bye.
Bye.